Costa, Wall Street Journal reporter. She was inside the courtroom for Trump's arraignment last Tuesday. And Paul Butler is back with me. So welcome to you both again. To you, Paul. Deborah, I'll start with you and get to the arraignment in just a minute. But I do want to ask you first about this new report from your colleague saying hours before Trump appeared at a Miami courthouse and pleaded not guilty, the chairman of Nevada's Republican Party walked into the federal trial court in Washington. What was that about?
Thank you so much, Alex, for having me on. Yeah, my colleagues Sadie Gurman and C. Ryan Barber report that they were seen at the Washington courthouse. And it's unclear if that particular federal probe is going to lead to an indictment. But just hours before, this was going on in Washington, D.C. And then here we are in this incredible historic moment in Miami, Donald Trump pleading not guilty to these incredible charges that are historic. And let me tell you a little bit about what it was like in that courtroom, because I did happen to be in that courtroom.
Yeah, Wait, let me just establish this, because you were sitting directly behind Secret Service, right? Jack Smith was there. You had, I understand, a really good view of Donald Trump. So take it from there and talk about his demeanor. Yeah.
If you see, do you see that hazy feminine blob in the background with the collared dress? That's actually me. I don't know how I got lucky enough to sit right there. But it was incredible because right when I walked in, the first thing I noticed was the Secret Service. They had a very aggressive, tense demeanor. I mean, one of them kept clenching his jaw repeatedly. They all furrowed their brows as we, the press, walked in. And honestly, I didn't even notice that Donald Trump was already seated in the courtroom until I sat down, got my bearings, looked around, and realized that Donald Trump was sitting just 2 rows in front of me, and actually I was at an angle and was able to make out his profile as he looked over and whispered to his attorney. And so basically he wasn't turning around that entire time. He didn't look at Jack Smith. He didn't look at any of the federal prosecutors. He was seated looking forward the entire time. At times, he folded his arms in front of him. You know, at one point, the most interesting thing I saw was when his aide, Walt Nauta, was signing the bond paperwork. He looked over at him and he closed his eyes for about 2 seconds and then blinked very slowly. And he repeated that like about 5 times, and while clenching his jaw really, really tightly.
Hang on a second. Did that feel like a message he was sending? Did he have something in his eye? I mean, what happened there?
I don't know. It was a sequence of events that was really interesting. He did it 5 times in a row. He wasn't looking back at anyone. It was just kind of like a moment that he was having. And I have to say, I've never seen that kind of expression on Donald Trump before. And I have to add that when he got up and turned to leave the courtroom, he was looking down at the ground and he was pressing his lips, pursing them tightly together. And then the corners of his mouth just dropped into the deepest frown I've ever seen on anyone in my entire life. And then he looked up at me and the other reporters around me, kind of with a bit of curiosity. I mean, this is the first time that he was looking anywhere in the courtroom behind him. And then he just kind of walked out, flanked by Secret Service. And I had a chance to speak with a former assistant U.S. attorney right before going into the courtroom about how this measures in history. And he happened to have been at the very first Senate hearing around Watergate. And he said that was kindergarten compared to this. This is much more serious because it deals with issues of national security. Yeah. So I was really
maybe that was not lost on Donald Trump, given the expressions you're describing. I mean, that would seem like a normal interpretation of that. Let me bring Paul into this conversation, though this is absolutely fascinating what you're telling us, Deborah.